Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Time Management. We are excited that you are here with us tonight. We'd love for you to keep your cameras on if you're able so we can see your faces and feel more connected. Please also make sure that your microphones are muted during the session so that everyone can hear clearly. And please also take a moment to change your name to first and last, as we will be taking attendance and want to make sure that you get full credit for attending. Now it is my honor to introduce our speaker for this afternoon. James Devine is a lifelong music educator and storyteller who believes in the power of laughter, learning, and legacy. A husband, father of four, and proud grandfather of now 11, he teaches middle school music at a Title I school while also writing, speaking, and podcasting. A graduate of St. Joseph's College of Maine and the Army School of Music with service in Virginia, Japan, and Colorado. He is retired from the Colorado National Guard in 2006, and he holds a master's in music education from Southwest Oklahoma University. Family, please join me in welcoming James Devine.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to sharing some tips and ideas of things that have worked for you. I just have one update on that bio. I'm no longer at a Title I school. In fact, I see one of my coworkers on the screen. I'm at New Summit Charter Academy. These are things I've actually incorporated in my own life because if you think about it, we all could use more time, but we're all given the same 24 hours a day. Sometimes we just think, I wish I had a little bit more time. And that's not always going to be the case. I want to share with you a story. When I was at Falcon High School, my son was on the wrestling team, and we lived about half an hour away from the school. So school let out about 2:30 and wrestling went till 6:30. And I decided I'm not going to drive half an hour home and then half an hour back to pick him up. I'll just wait here with him. And I thought I'm going to get so much done because now I have so much time. I'm going to have 4 hours extra to get things done. Well, here's what I quickly discovered. At some point, my brain would just be too fried to really do anything else. I would get about an hour and a half of work done, and then I had to either read or walk or go exercise or do something different because I could not get 4 hours of stuff done. And when you're teaching high school band, there always seems like there's more stuff to do. So it's not, even if I were to able to magically give you all 2 extra hours in your day or 4 extra hours or 10 extra hours, there would still come a point where your body or your brain or something would say, I just don't have any more to give. So the best thing we can do is figure out how are we going to use the time we do have a little bit better instead of thinking of trying to get more time. And if you give me your attention for about the next 20 minutes, I'm going to give you at least 7 tips that you can incorporate. And some of them will seem like they're obvious, but I'll kind of share maybe of why they're not always obvious. So the first one is limit your online time. This is one of those obvious ones, right? Sure, James, tell us what we need to do. We already know we need to do that. But here's what I've noticed with online time. Sometimes we just need to put some fences in place. We know that there's some people who take one approach and they're like, let's get rid of all social media. Let's get rid of all online time. And then that way we can control it better. But in this day and age, that's probably not realistic. I'm finding more and more things require me to do something online. So there's a certain amount of things I have to be online to do. But here's some things we can do to help limit that time. First of all, if you're going to be on social media, I'm on 3 different social medias every morning, but I limit that to the morning, and I have about a 15-minute block. And if I don't hit it in that block, I just move on to something else. And I kind of do that because I'm very intentional with that social media. I'm looking at publishing articles and posting podcasts that I've done to share with other people. And then sometimes I'll share with pictures of what my wife and I are doing. We decided, and actually our grandkids' parents decided, but we've we support them and follow this, that we don't post pictures of our grandkids online. No one needs to see what they're doing. They're kids. And so, but with my wife and I do something, we'll post that. So what another tip you can do is you can take your phone and use the technology to your advantage. I don't know about the non-iPhones, but on my iPhone, I can push a button and say, set a timer for 10 minutes. And it sets the timer. I don't have to unlock my screen or anything. And then that's one of the ways I can control that online time. So put some fences around your online time, around your social media, around posting or endless scrolling, because we all know if we just sit down and say, I'm just going to take a look at Facebook, you could easily eat up 30, 45 minutes, 60 minutes and not have accomplished anything. This is my favorite one. Touch email only one time. And I'm going to tell you how to do that. About half an hour ago, I checked my email and I was at inbox empty, which that's my goal to get to 3 times a day, because I usually check email in the morning around noontime and then later in the day. But first, I want to share with you a horror story. I once I had a colleague who was my supervisor for our department. She was the choir teacher. And she came to me and said, James, I asked you a week ago to send me something that I was required to send her. And I said, I sent that to you. I sent it about 30 minutes after you asked for it. And so she's like, well, I don't think I've seen it. And she's like, hold on a second. And she had her computer with her. She opens up her email program and she has 1,100 emails, 1,100 emails in her inbox. And sure enough, after she searched for about 6 minutes, she found mine and she's like, oh yeah, there, I see it. I'm sorry. I thought you didn't send it. And I was thinking to myself, how in the world can you keep yourself organized? How can you be the department chair if you have all of these emails just sitting in your email box? It was kind of like a long to-do list. And that's okay to have a long to-do list. But if you have them all in your email inbox, then it actually takes up brain power and it takes up thinking power and it takes up space in your day when it doesn't need to. And so I'm going to show you 5 things that you can do, and I'm going to dig into these a little bit more as well. 5 things you can do with your email: do, delegate, defer, file, and delete. And this has worked so well for me. This alone probably added 5 hours a week to my time available. So do is obvious. If it's something you can do right then, do it and get it out of your email inbox, and then you don't have to worry about it. And we'll talk about a rule that you can use for when to know if it's something you can do right then or if you need to wait. Delegate. If I get an email and it's something that my principal is actually needs to be involved in, or the librarian at my school, or the business office, but for some reason the email comes to me, I immediately delegate that. And it takes me 60 seconds to reply to the person and said, hey, thank you for your email. I'm not the person who needs to do this, but I'm going to copy the person who does on this. And I put that person in the carbon copy, send it off. And now it's off of my plate. It's out of my email inbox, and I delete it because it's not my responsibility. It's not something I need to be worried about. So you can delegate it to the person responsible for it. Defer. This one is probably the one rule that the choir teacher I worked with could have really used to her advantage. And defer just means we're going to put it off until a later time, but you don't want it sitting there in your inbox, because then it's cluttering up mind space. And every time you see it, it's the same thing on a desk. We don't have time to really get into that, but if you have 20 things on your desk that you have to do, then your brain, every time you see that, you're like, oh yeah, I have to do that. Oh yeah, I have to do that. Instead of putting it in your plan of when you're going to do it. So if it's something that you can defer, then you're going to put it off for later. And I have an example of one that just happened to me yesterday. I had my annual heater inspection done, and the guy gave us a repair bill for some things. And I said, well, I'm not sure if I'm going to repair it. He said everything was safe and it's working fine. I'm not sure if it's going to repair it because it seems to be at the end of its life. Can you give me a quote on a heater? So I got that email this morning, and it's not something I'm going to go buy a heater right now, but I need to keep track of that. But I don't need it in my inbox to be email number 1101. And so what I did with that particular email is I filed it. I created a new file in my email program, and it is called heater quotes. And so I took a look at the quote, took me 60 seconds to look at it. I emailed the guy back, thank you for sending the quote. And then I moved that email to the heater quotes file that I just created this morning. So now if I need that, if the heater breaks next month and I decide I'm going to go with that quote, I just look up in the heater quotes file and there I can find the email, versus if it were in one of 1,000 emails, I might never find it again, but it's out of my email inbox now. And then my favorite one is delete. If you're not sure whether something is something you should do, you're not sure if it's something you should delegate, if it's not, you're not sure if it's something you should defer, or you're like, well, I might be interested in that, but I really don't want to save it. You can always look it up later. And so just delete, and then you don't have to think about it. Or you get emails where, I don't know about you, but I get a bunch of emails, people offering to do something for me. Oh, I noticed you have a book. I'm a book promoter. Are you interested in my services? Delete. Not because I might not be interested, but if I were to do that, I would go with someone I knew and not someone who's going to send me an email about it. I promise you, if you do these 5 things with your email and really focus on touching email just one time, the first time you see the email, you do one of these 5 things with it, that's going to save you a lot of time right there, especially if you're in a job that involves email. Some of you might not be. My wife's a dental hygienist. She does not get very many emails. And so this wouldn't be something that would save her a lot of time. But most of us who are getting emails, that would really help out a lot. If you create a rule, I call it the 2-minute rule. If something gets in your inbox or in your to-do list, a lot of times our inboxes become our to-do list, depending on what type of work you're in. Then sometimes if you can get it done in 2 minutes or less, just do it right then. Don't file it or save it or defer it. Just do it then and get it off of your plate. I remember once I was in charge of a jazz festival, and it was like pulling teeth. One of the things we did as part of the jazz festival, my school provided pizza for every student that attended. And so I sent out an email to all the directors. Can you please tell me approximately how many students you're bringing? I just needed a range. I'm going to have 10 to 15 students, or I think we're bringing 15, but there's 2 we're not sure about. I just needed something like that. I didn't need a list of names. I didn't need a roster. I just needed a number. Each of those directors could have responded to me and said, I think we're bringing this many, because they were practicing for their jazz band was practicing, and they knew how many were in their jazz band. It was like pulling teeth. I was getting really frustrated because some of them I had written 3 or 4 emails, and I made it clear to them. I said, just tell me the number. I don't need names. I don't need to know the details. Just give me an approximate number. And some of them I ended up having to call after sending 3 or 4 emails, and then they finally gave me a number. I wish that they would have followed this rule, the 2-minute rule, because it would have it took them more brain power to avoid answering me than it would have to just hit reply and put the number 7 or the number 12 or however many they were going to need. So if something gets put on your to-do list that you can do in 2 minutes or less, do it right then. Take it off your to-do list, and it will actually save you time, because then it's not going to occupy that brain power. Because something that takes less than 2 minutes, thinking about it is going to take more than that if you don't do it right then. Now, not everyone can do this, but the next thing that I really love is what I call control your meetings. The the first school I taught at, we had this big outdoor graduation ceremony that we did every year, and I was responsible for contracting the sound system. And the first time that I went to the meeting, we always had a graduation meeting, and there's 8, 10 people in the meeting, and our boss was at the meeting. And so he's going around to everybody. They all had different responsibilities. Someone had to get the chairs, someone had to get the commencement speaker. And he would get to me and he said, James, did you get the sound system? And I responded with, yes, I have the sound system. I've given the contract and they're coming at this time and they're bringing this many microphones. And so I realized after sitting in a 90-minute meeting, really the purpose of that meeting was for the big boss, to know that everybody was doing what they were supposed to be doing. So in the future, when I would get that email saying when we were having the meeting, I would respond to him with all the details and a signed copy of the contract for the sound system, and that I had submitted the check request already, and what they were bringing, how many speakers, how many microphones they were bringing, and what time they were going to get there. And I would say, boss, do you need anything else from me? Do you need me to be at the meeting, or is this all you need to know? And he would say, James, that's what I needed to know. You don't need to be at this meeting. And if everyone had done that, he could have probably saved a meeting. So some other ways you might be able to control a meeting is if you're a secretary or assistant and you need to make an announcement that applies to everybody at the meeting. Maybe you can say, hey, boss, can I sneak in at the start and give my 90-second announcement so I can go leave and do work that I need to do for you? And most bosses are going to be amenable to that. So when possible, and I know it's not always possible, but when possible, control your meetings. Here's another one of those that seems like it's obvious. Schedule time to get work done. This is something that our modern culture, we have a hard time with, especially young people, especially if they have one of these in their hands, a cell phone or a device, because they think, oh, I'm going to get my math homework done. And they do one math problem, and then they get a notification that their friend is doing something. So they respond to their friend on their phone, and then they do math problem number 2, and then they respond to a friend, and then they do math problem 3, and then they like a cat video. And so they're not getting anything done, because research has shown it takes our brains 20 minutes to go from one task to another. And so if we're constantly dealing with interruptions or notifications on our phone or on our computer, then that takes up that brain power to get the deep work done. Some of the things that I've done to help me in this is I actually schedule deep work time. As a teacher, lesson planning is probably the most deep work that I do. And every Wednesday, that's the only thing I put on my calendar during my prep time is lesson planning, because I'm trying to get the next week's lesson planning done. I don't talk to students. I don't go to meetings with my admin or go ask them questions. I'm doing deep work, doing the lesson planning. And then I get that done usually much sooner than I expected, because I planned that and purposely put nothing else in my calendar for that time. When I'm doing my taxes, same thing. I don't like doing my taxes, and it takes me about 2 or 3 hours. And so I schedule a time where I know I won't be interrupted, so I can get it done from start to finish rather than stretching it out over several weeks. So as much as I hate those 3 hours on whatever evening or Saturday I plan that, I get it done. And that ends up happening. Sometimes it might mean, if you go back to that first slide where we were talking about fences and boundaries, sometimes it might mean setting some boundaries. It might mean, if you usually have your office door open and you don't mind people coming in, you might have just a certain time between 1 and 2:30 every day. My door's going to be closed. Please don't disturb me during that time. Anytime you see my door open, that's your time to come in and ask me questions. I think just about every job has that deep work that you need to get done, and you want to try to schedule that in. I think sometimes a lot of us, our desire to serve, which is a good desire to have, our desire to serve our fellow um, coworkers and our boss and our clients, our students as a teacher, our desire to serve, if we're not careful, can become all encompassing. And then we end up being stressed. We end up not doing as well. I could, I'm going to admit something, mainly because I don't do this, but I could wing it. I hate that word, by the way. I could wing it as a teacher and not do any lesson planning, and I would probably be okay. But I would not feel like I was at the top of my game if I did that. And I think there's a lot of people who end up winging it when they could be so much better in whatever their jobs are and whatever they're called to do. So schedule time to get work done, especially deep work. Number 6, sometimes it's okay not to finish something. This is a hard one because sometimes we're taught so often, if you start something, you should finish it. But there are times when it's okay to let it go. Recently, I was reading a book. I liked the movie Atlas Shrugged, and I thought, well, I might like the book too. And so I started reading the book, and I've always had this thought that if I start reading a book, I should finish it. And I got about 20% of the way through, and I was like, I don't like this as a book. And so I know it's not quite the same as time at work, but I decided to not finish that book and use that time for something else. Sometimes as a teacher, I come up with a great idea that I think the students are going to love. And so I start putting it together and putting the details together, maybe for a specific event that I think will be beneficial to them. And sometimes I used to get to a point where sometimes the students would seem to not have much interest, and I would still push through and force myself to have that event or that special day or whatever we were doing. But then at one point, I started thinking, why am I doing this? If the students don't want it, why should I put that extra time? So it's okay to not finish something, or maybe you find out you get going in it. Maybe you're starting a new project at work. You find out it's going to cost more than you thought, or it's going to take more time. It doesn't mean you have to take it off the table forever, but you could just take it, wipe it off your to-do list and move on. And it's okay to not finish that. Number 7, engage in a weekly review and preview. And what I mean by that is you're looking back at how the week went and thinking, what could I have done differently? Did I schedule too many things? That used to be my biggest fault, was I would be too optimistic in what I could get done. And I'm not saying I don't do that now, but it used to be like, if this is just right and this is too busy, I'd be going all the way from here to here to here. And now it's more like just right, too busy, just right, too busy. So I'm still finding myself having to adjust through that. For me, I like to do this on Sunday nights, and everyone's going to have a different plan that works for them. For me, I still prefer a written calendar. And for my weekly calendar, I have a calendar that kind of looks like this, and I have my week planned out. And so I look at the next week coming up on Sunday nights, and I start thinking to myself, did I overcommit to something? Is there something I have to make an adjustment for? Or maybe something popped up that I wasn't expecting. And so now I have to make some adjustments in what I'm expecting from myself. For example, a couple of weeks ago, all of my kids are married and grown. The youngest one, they live in Phoenix, and they were in town for a wedding, and I wanted to spend time with them. So I made some adjustments in some things I was planning on getting done that I deferred for the days they were with us so I could spend some time with them. So for me, that happens on Sunday night. And also every summer, I'm blessed to have a job where I have a lot of time off in the summer. And that's kind of my thinking and reevaluation time. I start thinking, what do I want to stay committed to this next school year? And what do I want to eliminate from my schedule this next school year because it's taking too much time? What you're kind of doing during that weekly review and preview, you're planning on what's coming up. To give you an example, I have all of my grandkids' birthdays in my calendar. And when I go through that review and I'm looking ahead, I actually look ahead about a month, but a minimum of a week. I'm looking deeply at a week. If I haven't bought their present yet, I put that in my planner. I need to get a present for grandbaby number 5 because their birthday's coming up in 2 weeks, and I haven't thought about it. So that gives me a chance to think about it. It gives you a chance to prioritize what is important for you to have on your calendar. What do you need to take off of your calendar? What do you need to eliminate? What do you need to reschedule? All those things are very helpful to do, to just give some thought to it. And I'm going to tell you a confession, and my coworker better not tell my secret to my fellow colleagues at school. I bring my calendar with me everywhere because sometimes if I'm in a meeting that I can't control, I can have my paper calendar open and I can be glancing at it and it kind of takes up some of my brain space. So I don't get too bored in the meeting, and it gives me a chance to think about it. And no one objects to me having my paper calendar, but if I had my phone calendar, if I had a phone calendar on, there'd be some people who would object to me having that out in a meeting. So I prefer paper. That could be a factor of my age. But I'm going to say too that research has shown that when we physically write something down, like handwrite something out, for some reason, it's more likely to happen than if we just type out a list and print it or put it on a digital to-do list. I don't know what the reasoning is for that, but that's just something I've researched that has shown that happens like that. I do have some more tips for you after this, but I want to see if we have any questions before we move on to that next part. So those were 7 tips that if they don't get you 5 hours this week, then you can have your money back that you paid for this class.
I don't have any questions, but I wanted to say hi. I don't know if you remember me. We used to work together at Falcon High School. I was one
Yes,
of
I
the
do
English
remember.
teachers, but I just wanted to say
I
hi.
do remember. That was a long time ago.
Yes, it was.
James, I may have missed it, but on this last point, engage in a weekly review and preview. What do you do with your weekly review?
So I look back at the week that just happened and I think to myself, did I plan this well? Did I try to do too much? Did I have too many things? Did I end up being too busy and too overwhelmed? And I can't do anything about the past week, but then that can change my thinking for the future and how many things I put in my plan. So like, for example, it took me a while to develop this devoting Wednesdays to lesson planning thing. It used to be one of the things on my list of things to do every Wednesday. And I just found out I would run out of time and not have a chance to get all my lesson planning done and the other things. So now I purposely do that Wednesday is my lesson planning time. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
I wrote in the chat, you mentioned that 4 hours is too long for any human to concentrate consecutively. But are you a fan of the Pomodoro method of work where you do like a 25-minute burst of work and then a 5-minute off and 25 minutes on?
I've heard of that before, and I think that can be a very effective thing, but it wasn't so much that 4 hours was too much. It was after a whole day of teaching. And then I thought, oh, I can get 4 more hours of things done. And that's when I found, because I had already worked 8.5 hours, and I was just waiting for my son to be done. But that method, in fact, I even recommend that for people who are like, I can't give up my social media, or I can't do whatever. If they do 30, 45 minutes of deep work and then set a timer and go and scroll on Facebook so that you don't end up being sucked in for an hour and not getting your other things done, then I think that could be very effective. I don't know if it's because I've been in the education field for so long, or maybe it's musicians are wired this way. But even when I was in the Army band, we would work for about 45 to 60-minute rehearsal and then have like a 15-minute break. And that just seemed to always work really well for me. So I never heard of that method. I've heard it called some different things. But yeah, if that works for you, then definitely do that.
And I'll piggyback on that. I'm guessing everybody on here's the parents. And so we didn't grow up with social media and notifications and bells ringing all the time, versus our kids. So the thought of turning off notifications and saying to your children, call me when you need me, I don't know, the whole notification creates this sense of urgency, and urgent isn't the same as important or essential.
Exactly. That's a great statement. Urgent does not necessarily mean it's important, or even what you should be focused on. I personally, many years ago, I started turning off all my notifications, and I actually close apps that I'm not using just in case they try to send me notifications. And I was telling my wife, so my wife's a dental hygienist, and when I have my appointment coming up, I probably get 20 appointment reminders. And I was telling her, I said, that drives me crazy that your office does that. And she said that a lot of the younger people, they like that. She says a lot of people comment, they're like, oh, we're so glad you send us the notifications because we would forget our appointment. But me, if I write it in my calendar, I'm going to be there unless I'm at a funeral or in the hospital. Any other questions?
I have a quick question, James. Where would you recommend somebody who is just hearing this and they're like overwhelmed? Like, where would you say to begin for somebody who's like,
start with one of the things. And I would actually suggest starting with the email one, if that's something that that your job entails a lot of email. Start with the email, because it's just going to feel like everything is a little bit more controlled. But you could actually start with your workspace. So I'll share another story. That same teacher coworker who had 1,100 emails in her inbox, she would always say that my office was we had moved into a new building, and my office was about this much bigger than hers. And we had all these shelves up above our workspace. And I think every inch of shelf and workspace in her office was filled. And I think she was just joking, but I'm not sure. She seemed serious. She's like, why did they give you the bigger office by that much? You don't even need it. And the workspace was just so cluttered. I teach at 2 schools right now, and that keeps my cup is full, but not in a overly too much way. It seems just right. So that's why I like to describe it that my cup is full. But I'm off of one of them this week. There's a fall break happening, and the other one I'm still teaching at. And so I went home, and even in my office at home, where most of the time I'm practicing my saxophone, it just felt like I had too much stuff in there. And I took some things out that I rarely use, and I put them somewhere else. I put them in a closet, and I know where they're at if I need them, but they're not taking up my space in my brain, and that sort of thing. So I would say start with email, start with your workspace, and then maybe just writing things down that you need to get done.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, if there's no more questions, I'll go into the next thing. These are 5 more tips, 5 bonus tips, and you didn't even have to pay extra for them. The first one is to do a time audit. When I was in high school, I've been working ever since I was 5 years old, just hustling, taking out trash and doing things for people, walking people's dogs, whatever I could find to do to earn a little bit of extra money. But when I was about 15, 16, I was working probably a good 30, 40 hours a week in the summer and 20 plus hours a week during the school year. And I kept realizing, why do I have no money? It was before I had a car, and I was making pretty good amounts of money, but it always seemed like it was gone. And so I did a money audit, and I just took a notebook, and every time I spent money, I wrote it down. And after the end of a month, I realized where all my money was going. After work, my buddy and I would go to hang out at Taco Bell or Pizza Hut or McDonald's, and I was spending probably over half of my paycheck on fast food. And I was like, I've got to cut this out if I'm going to save any of this money. So you could do, in fact, this kind of goes back to the question you had just asked. This could be where someone starts. Just write down for a week, write down everything you do that takes up your time, even if you're sitting on the couch relaxing. Okay, I just spent 30 minutes relaxing on the couch, or it took me an hour to make dinner, or whatever it might be. But write down everything that you spend time on. And then you can go back and look at that, and you can start thinking to yourself, wow, it's taken me this long to make dinner. Maybe I can figure out a way to make that shorter. Or, wow, I thought I'd only spent 10 minutes a day on social media, and I'm finding out I'm spending 2 hours a day. Well, no wonder I don't have time to do my homework. There's so many things that you can find out by keeping track of what you're doing. And so that would be, do a time audit is another tip. This was a view from a cruise my wife and I took a few years back. And so if you think about the view, it's like a far off view. And so I put that on this second extra tip: schedule time off. If you find yourself too busy to take time off, it might be because you don't think ahead what you're going to do. I remember once having a friend, he seemed like he was moving every 3 months. And so he'd say, "Oh, what are you doing Saturday, James?" And if I said nothing, he's like, "Oh, great. Can you help us move? We're moving again." And it's not that I didn't want to help my friend, or I would try to have an excuse or anything, but like someone recently was asking me for some time, and it was someone I don't really know, and they wanted time for a discussion about something I really don't want to discuss about. And so they said, "Well, don't you have any time?" And I said, "No, I'm too busy fulfilling God's mission for my life to schedule time for this." So when I'm always excited to get the next school year calendar. My brain kind of works in school year cycles because I've been a teacher for 28 years. And so in January, February is usually when they publish the next year's calendar. And I'm always so excited to get that, because then I look through the calendar, and once again, I go with a printed calendar. That's just how my brain works. But I'll give you an example. December 13th is my anniversary. And so I'll look at the December 13th weekend, and I block that off as soon as I get a new calendar for the following year. I block off my my anniversary weekend. It's not to say I would never schedule something during that weekend. I do some gigging. I'm a saxophonist, and I do some gigging and weddings and things like that. Well, if I have my weekend blocked off for my anniversary, and I get a call for that weekend, my price is higher than what it would normally be, because then I can say to my wife, "Hey, I have something on our weekend, but we're going to be able to spend even more money by doing it the following weekend because I'm making this extra money on this weekend." But I won't take something that's like at my normal price for that weekend. So something you can do is plan the times off. The school schedule, like I was saying, works really well for me. We're very blessed to have a lot of 3-day weekends. and I will block off that weekend. I don't plan anything. And then that way I know I'm going to get that time off. I might plan a bike ride or something fun, but I won't plan a speaking engagement, let's say, or even a gig, because I know I need that time off. So sometimes if you take that big view and take a whole year view of what your life is like and what's important to you, then you can fill up that schedule before it gets full. We talked a little bit about this with the email thing. The Army is really good at delegation. I think it's probably one of the things that they do best. You're pushing whatever task down to the lowest level that it can be accomplished and still accomplish the mission. Think about in your own work what you can delegate. I'll give you a few examples as a teacher. I could pass out the music and collect the music and do it more efficiently and probably keep the music more orderly than having a student do it. But I find if I ask a student who is really interested in that, give them about 20 minutes of training, they absolutely love it. It's a task I don't like doing, and it saves me a lot of time. Yes, I have that initial 20-minute investment, but then throughout the school year, that saves me 6 or 8 hours. So think about things like that. And sometimes if you are a control freak, you start thinking, I can do this better than anybody, or it's going to take me time to train them. Yes, that's true. But think about the time that it will save you, and think about that you're pouring forth into the future generations as well. Because maybe that person's going to discover they're really good at something, and they're going to be someone who does it better than you in the long run. And so by delegating it to others, you can actually be helping some of your fellow coworkers. This was, so this is Nancy Reagan, who was Ronald Reagan's wife. And a lot of people made fun of her because she in the 1980s, she went on a big anti-drug crusade, and she said, just say no. And there's a lot of truth in that, not just with drugs, but in general. If we learn to just say no, my default used to be yes. So someone would ask me, hey, James, can you do this? Will you fill in for this? Can you possibly do this? And my default used to be yes. And then what I found out is I would get burnt out because I didn't have time to do everything. I didn't do what I was called to do well. I didn't do what I didn't want to do well, but I was just doing it to help someone out. And so it took me a while to learn to just say no when someone asks me, or sometimes I'll say, I need to think about it, because I'm at a point now, like I was saying, my cup is full. I'm not too busy. I'm not too not busy. It's just right. But what that means is if I take something else and put it on my plate, I have to take something equally else off of it. And I'm always contemplating those kind of things and thinking about doing that. There was a time when I was at a high school, teaching at a high school, every year they asked the band to play at the basketball games. Well, we had a busy season for marching band, and that ended around mid-November, which is right about when basketball started. And then about mid-March, our season for going to on stage competitions was starting. And it was also a busy time with a lot of Saturday events. And so I didn't want to take on too many things with now putting basketball in the middle there too. It would have just made the whole year too busy. So it was hard for me to do so, but I learned to say, no, I'm sorry, we cannot support the basketball games. It's not because I didn't want to. It's not because I didn't think we could do well, because I thought it could be a very beneficial thing if they were able to hire someone else to do that. But I had to learn to say no. The same thing with when I was doing marching band. August, September, October were very busy with something just about every weekend. Labor Day weekend, there would be no marching band competitions. and our band would get invited every year to 1 or 2 Labor Day parades. And as much as I thought it would be cool to support that, I always said no, because the students and I both needed that 3 days to recharge before we went forward. So it's okay to say no, so that you can fulfill the mission that you're called to do. So we talked about a little bit about this one. You can see this is a picture from a few years ago, my workspace. If you can just put what you're working on right now on your workspace, that is going to save a lot of cluttering of your mind and brain. And so that picture on the left is my workspace with whatever I was working on at the moment when I took that picture. You can see on the right, there's a drawer that has a bunch of junk in it. And those are things that I might need to get to, but I'm not working on them right now. It might be something I'm working on tomorrow, and I can easily find it in that pile of things. I just recently organized my workspace here at one of the schools that I teach at. It was the same thing. It had gotten too cluttered. There was piles of things, and I took most of it and put it in a drawer. And so I know where it's at, and I can get to it when I need it, but I don't need it right this second at this moment. Now I have to tell you this, because this is something that some people say as well. I heard someone say one time, a cluttered desk is the sign of a cluttered mind. And so I always held to that maxim. Yes, I'm going to keep my desk clean. And so then I saw someone post something one time, and they said, well, if that's true, then what's an empty desk the sign of? But a cluttered mind can keep you from accomplishing everything that you want to accomplish. Any questions that have come up since we talked about these 5 other tips?
James, there was a request in the chat about, do you have a list of your tips at the beginning before you did this? Like, do you have a handout?
I do not. I can send you the or there's probably some way for me to put it in the is there some way for me to put it in the chat?
Yeah, if you could, if you have a means for us to get it, yeah, you can just go to the everyone chat
All right,
and
I
then copy
lost
it, paste it in there.
I
Your
lost
slideshow.
our meeting. No, I closed the slideshow, but I lost the how to get to like the chat and all that.
So if you go down to the bottom, you'll see there's a little bubble with 3 dots.
All right, I see that. But it doesn't say chat in that one. Oh, I see the chat. Okay. Maybe I have to stop sharing. All right, I am going to add it to the I'm going to add it to the chat. And it's called the Save Time template.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? All right, if there are no questions, I'm done with my presentation, and I'll hand it back to you guys at Parents Challenge.
Thank you so much. This was great information.
Thank you.
I enjoyed it.